Close quarter combat. That's what some Ukrainian troops are up against in the relentless battle for Bakhmut. One deputy commander telling CNN that his units are literally jumping into Russian trenches to regain ground. It is truly hand-to-hand combat. And while Russian forces are closing in on Bakhmut Center, keep in mind this is a battle that's been going on for 7 months that they said would be a couple weeks. A spokesman for Ukraine's Eastern Command says Wagner-led units are sustaining heavy losses. They are recording more than 200 Russian soldiers dead in 24 hours, hundreds more wounded. Western officials say the Wagner units are running out of manpower and likely have lost access to prison recruits due to an ongoing conflict with Russia's defense ministry. Wagner reportedly now turning to sports clubs and gyms in Russia to try to get new recruits. And the mounting losses are prompting a group of Russian wives and mothers to call on Putin to stop sending their loved ones to war, equating them to, quote, lambs to the slaughter. Joining me now is the former Secretary of Defense in the Trump administration, Mark Esper. And Secretary, I appreciate your time. So I want to ask you about this video. These are Russian women. They say their loved ones were forced to join assault groups after only 4 days of training. Now, obviously, we can't independently verify these claims, but as you know, it's very consistent with other videos that we share daily with our audience. Does Putin, Secretary, have any shortage right now, do you believe, of potential recruits at this point?
Oh, I would think so, Aaron. Reports from, I think, the UK Ministry of Defense said that he has committed up to 90% of his ground forces in Ukraine. And we know you mentioned the Wagner Group. Of their 50,000 soldiers, 40,000 of them are convicts that they took from prisons. And the recruiting drive last year, they may have pulled in 300,000 soldiers, but an equal amount we think left the country. So it's a really bad situation. And what they're doing with these young recruits, sending them into battle without much training or any equipment, it's really immoral. And at some point, the Russian people have to get fed up with what's happening here, having your young men sent into this meat grinder called Ukraine.
So we've obtained a letter, Secretary, from a Russian soldier that was first obtained by an independent Russian journalist, and I've got it here. It reads, quote, "The enemy is splitting us out like sunflower seeds everywhere around us. They deceive us. There's no truth anywhere. We've been sent like lambs to the slaughter, to our imminent death. We saw corpses and mutilated people without arms and legs with their guts hanging out." What is your reaction to, we're looking at this, seeing this in print in a soldier's, frankly, incredibly precise and neat handwriting?
Well, it really is a killing field over there, and Bakhmut in particular. We know the reports are that for every Ukrainian that is killed, there's anywhere from 5 to 7 Russian soldiers.
Right.
The Ukrainians report that Russian soldiers are stacking up like like logs, a cord of wood on the battlefield. That Wagner commanders are telling their troops, if you don't advance, we'll shoot you when you come back. I mean, it is just really immoral what's happening there, and it's a terrible situation. And the Ukrainians are fighting for their country, for their sovereignty. So look, they're fighting to win, and they are winning. What's happening to this generation of Russian men is just horrible, and I'm afraid it's only going to get worse because at some point the Ukrainians are going to launch their counteroffensive, maybe in April or May, and it's really going to push the Russians to a point where they're going to have to conscript more and more of men from their country.
And this is happening as within Russia there is now, some sort of a civil war. I mean, I'm obviously not using the word formally, but the Institute for the Study of War says that the Russian defense minister, they say, is, quote, likely seizing the opportunity to deliberately expend both elite and convict Wagner forces in Bakhmut in an effort to weaken Prigozhin, obviously the leader of the Wagner Group, and derail his ambitions for greater influence in the Kremlin. So basically saying that the Russian military is purposefully trying to get Wagner forces killed off. Russians trying to get Russians killed off in the battlefield en masse. If you just take a step back, does this shock you at all to know something like this is happening?
Well, on one hand, it is shocking, but on the other, it's not surprising. I mean, Prigozhin, of course, has made an enemy of many within the Ministry of Defense, giving his critiques all the way up to the chain of command with my former counterpart, Sergei Shoigu. And he is searching for influence within the Kremlin and trying to work his way closer into Vladimir Putin. Now, what's interesting, too, is Prigozhin is from the battlefield said that he's trying to even call the Kremlin, and the Kremlin won't answer.
Right.
So it's very curious as to what's going on within the country right now. And you talked about the young boys being slaughtered. unfortunately, it seems that Putin is sending, the ethnic minorities across all of Russia, not the young men in Moscow or around Moscow to the fight, but it's really the ethnic minorities that make up a large portion of the Russian population.
Well, of course, as all this happens, you get more saber rattling out of Moscow, the ongoing threat of some sort of nuclear escalation here. You have the situation, obviously, rising tensions with China. And in this context, former President Trump, as I mentioned, is campaigning tonight in Iowa. He just said something. I wanted to play it for you.
Standing before you today, I am the only candidate who can make this promise. I will prevent World War III, because I really believe you're going to have World War III.
You know him. You served under him as president. What's your reaction to that?
Well, I don't think we're going to have World War III. Nobody wants World War III. And look, I think we in the Republican Party are going to have a fine slate of nominees in the Republican primary to take on President Trump as well. And I think many of them are very capable. And I've argued that I think we need a new generation of leaders from both parties. And so I'm hoping one of those younger leaders will rise up within the GOP. And I'm hopeful for the nomination contest this year.
Mark Esper, thank you very much. I appreciate your time, Secretary.
Thanks, Aaron.
All right.